Guys, I love movies. I love to talk about movies. I love to talk about complicated plot lines. I love to talk about interesting characters. I love to talk about movies. I love reviewing movies. Today I do not. Today has been a terrible day because I had to sit through a terrible movie. What's up guys, Cam here coming at you with another movie review. Now before I get started with this one, I just want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Chris Smith because he was my first ever subscriber on this channel. Thanks a lot, man. Your support really means a lot. Now today is a little bit of a doozy because I'm reviewing a movie that I found very painful to sit through. Sukiyaki Western Django is directed by Takashi Miike and stars a bunch of Japanese people who I'm not even gonna bother naming, and with a nice little cameo by Quentin Tarantino. Now I first bought this movie a few years ago, and this movie is so bad! I could tell right in the very opening shot of this movie that this was not gonna be good. But before I get into that though, the first thing I want to talk about is this. Japanese cowboys. What?! Yes, this movie centers around a bunch of English-speaking Japanese cowboys, and the main character is a cowboy who we don't even know the name of. Literally, we know nothing about this character. We know nothing about his backstory. We don't know his name. Nothing. He is the most one-dimensional protagonist I have ever seen. Every single line that he says is spoken like this. No emotion whatsoever. And the basic plot of this movie, this guy, this gunman, is caught between two warring clans, and he has to kind of decide which clan he wants to join, but at the same time he wants to double-cross them, and there's a treasure involved, and I'm gonna be perfectly honest here, the plot at the very core of this movie does not make any sense whatsoever. There is a crapload of exposition all throughout the movie that's supposed to establish this world that these people are living in, but it doesn't make sense at all, because they talk about a big great war that happened before that you know nothing about, between these two clans that you know nothing about. And they try and shoehorn Shakespeare in there, and Henry VI, and the War of the Roses, and it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't progress the plot at all, because at the very core of this movie, the plot is basically just these two clans in this town that want to fight over a treasure, and this gunman, this gunslinger of sorts, is caught between them. That's literally it. All the other world building that they were trying to do before is completely unnecessary. It doesn't do anything for the plot whatsoever. Now, as I briefly mentioned before, the opening shot of this movie is just atrociously awful. It's an upward-facing shot of a windmill set against a sunset sky. But the sky looks so absurdly fake that you just can't help but look at it and just let your jaw drop. And it pans out to this cowboy that's sitting in the dirt, and I guess he has these people that are trying to kill him. And the sun in the background, you can see the wire holding the sun in the sky. It is right there in front of you, clear as day. The entire set that they're on just looks so ridiculously fake that you're starting off the movie laughing at it. And then the very next thing that you notice is the acting is terrible. I guess the typical cowboy gimmick is to talk to people doing this with your lips. It looks like these people are 2 seconds away from having a seizure with every line of dialogue that comes out of their freaking mouths. And speaking of dialogue, I swear, I am 100% sure that at least half of the dialogue in this movie is audio dubbed. Because if you pay attention to the way that these people's lips are moving as they're talking, half the time it doesn't even match. Now, I talked a little bit about the protagonist of this movie, the nameless, one-dimensional, completely disposable protagonists. Let's talk a bit about the villains of this movie, because there's two main villains of this movie. You got the leader of one clan, the Heikis, and you got the leader of the other clan, the Genjis, both of which are just terrible actors. The leader of the Genjis is this really suave, sophisticated kind of guy, and the leader of the Heikis is just so annoying. Every word that he says comes out like this. It sounds like he's chewing on a desert. Come on, that voice is annoying. It is painful to listen to, and every single line of dialogue out of him is like that. Just... Now, as this is a cowboy movie, as you would expect, there is some gunslinging. There's just not a lot of it. Yeah, you have a couple of sequences here and there where the people are shooting at each other and, you know, spinning revolvers on their fingers and... And it's okay when it happens, it just doesn't happen very often. And there's a couple of hand-to-hand fight sequences that are just filmed horribly. Filmed and choreographed horribly. Like, I am not being sarcastic at all. It is laughable. Plus, I had to watch the movie with subtitles because I could not understand a word that these people were saying. I think it was a very big mistake to have Japanese people who obviously have Japanese as their native tongue try and do an entire movie in English. Especially doing an entire movie in English while trying to incorporate a Western cowboy drawl into their speaking and incorporate Western cowboy slang into their speaking too. It just doesn't work. Now, I've spent the last however long ragging on this movie. Does it have any redeeming qualities? Kind of. It does have a couple of scenes that will get a genuine chuckle out of you every now and then, which I will be discussing in my top 5 favorite, or in this case, top 5 laughable scenes, because this movie is just so terrible. I can't pick 5 scenes that I would say are my favorite. I can pick 5 that are absolutely atrociously bad that stand out to me, but I'll get to that later. Out of all of the characters in this movie, there's literally only one character that I got any enjoyment out of whatsoever. And it's the sheriff of this town. And the reason why I got a pretty good chuckle out of him is because I guess he's schizophrenic or something. He has kind of the Gollum Smeagol persona going on, where he's constantly arguing with himself and switching between voices and stuff. And some of the scenes that he's in are actually pretty funny. But trust me, it is not enough to be counted as a redeeming factor for this movie, because this movie has no redeeming factors. Guys, I'm not going to pull any punches with this one. I'm going to give Sukiyaki Western Django a 3 out of 10. There are little itty-bitty tidbits here and there that I find enjoyable about this movie, but they are grains of sand in an ocean of horribleness. Well guys, spoiler alert, I'll be talking about my top 5 laughable, horrible, just scenes from this movie. Number 5, the dancing prostitute. Yes, this movie does have a semi-main character who is a prostitute, and one of the first scenes that she is in is her dancing in a bar for all these guys. And it's, I guess, supposed to be erotic and sexy and sensual and whatnot, but it looks like she has Parkinson's. And there are all these unnecessary angle changes with the camera that kind of make it a little bit incomprehensible, and it just kind of drags on and on and on, and you're wondering, okay, you can stop now. What's gonna happen? This is going nowhere. Number 4. Introducing the 2 clans. You got the Heikes in red and the Genjis in white, and as the gunman strolls into the town, the 2 clans kind of come out of the woodwork and surround him. And one of the very first shots that are fired in this scene, it's a shotgun that blows a hole straight through the guy's stomach. And this is where the really bad acting comes into play, because this guy, who has a gaping hole in his stomach, turns around to his friends, and he's like, dang. It's so terrible! The acting is so bad! Number 3. I couldn't pick an actual scene for this, so I'm just gonna say all of the expositional dialogue. Every bit of the expositional, supposedly world-building dialogue of this movie that's supposed to establish the world that these people live in, but it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. You don't care about it. You don't know a damn thing about it at the end of the day. And there is just so much of it that you just don't give a shit about. All you want to see is people shoot each other. But it doesn't happen because there's so much crappy dialogue. Number 2, the end fight scene. Now this is supposed to be where everything comes together in a big battle, and you got cowboys shooting each other and firing revolvers and Gatling guns and all this crap, and explosions are happening everywhere. And it is just so underwhelming. You can hardly see what half the people are doing. Basically all they're doing is running across the camera, firing their guns that have no recoil, a pretty obviously photoshopped muzzle flash, and it just looks so fake. Everything looks so fake. I have never seen a cowboy movie that had a worse shootout scene than this. It is so laughably bad that all you want it to do is just be over. That's all you want. You're sitting here watching this scene, you're just like, I want it to end. And finally, in the very last little showdown between the gunman and the leader of the Genji clan, who's like this great swords master and this, that, and the other, it's over basically before it begins. The gunman fires a few shots that get deflected by the Genji leader's sword, and then they get really close to each other, and oh, turns out the gunman has a little revolver hidden up his sleeve. That's it. This entire movie has built up basically to nothing. And number one, the first scene of this movie. The first scene of this movie is the worst scene of this movie. Seriously. Because that's where you see all the bad acting come into play. That's where you see that sun, that setting sun that's held up by a very visible wire. Come on. That whole set. It looks like a set. It looks like they're sitting on a set that was made with 1 week's paycheck working in a fast food restaurant. That's how cheap it looks. It is so terrible. Ugh. Guys, I cannot keep talking about this movie. I'm going to give myself an aneurysm if I do. Obviously, I would not recommend this movie. But if you want to watch a shitty cowboy movie and laugh at it through the entire runtime, while at the same time being bored out of your tree because you can't understand what the hell these people are saying because you just wanted to get to the next shootout scene, then by all means, watch the movie. You'll see what I mean. So guys, I have a question. What's your favorite cowboy movie? Because I mean, come on, everybody's gotta have a favorite cowboy movie. Billy the Kid, Cat Ballou, Bonnie and Clyde, all that stuff. So yeah, what's your favorite cowboy movie? Despite how angry this movie makes me, I had a lot of fun talking to you guys about it, and I will see you in the next review.